So I truly believe that we need this research to happen. We should lock people up for prolonged periods of time in order to find out if cows being locked up for prolonged periods of time experience lockup-related chronic stress. There is something that I didn't know was happening to animals until a few months ago. Apparently, dairy farmers lock cows up into a head stanchion every day at feed bunks, and they do this for long periods of time, as in hours on end. This review paper implores farmers to no longer lock up cows for longer than 4 hours a day. Let's see why. But first, according to this paper, headlocks are considered necessary evil on the dairy farm. Dairy cattle are locked up regularly for pregnancy diagnosis, artificial insemination, veterinary-related treatments and examinations, vaccinations, heat detection, and feeding purposes. Apparently, the use of self-locking stanchions is beneficial because of its ease and efficiency in animal handling and worker safety. Lock-up stanchions also help reduce competition and aggression at the bunk by ensuring that minimum feed bunk space per cow is available for animals in the pen. The paper states that restraint in headlocks for more than 4 hours a day is associated with increased aggression in dairy cattle. It's also associated with reduced production of milk, up to 50% reduction due to higher cortisol levels, they say. So the bottom line is that chronic stress due to prolonged lockup has negative impacts on an animal's reproductive performance and would negatively impact the sustainability of dairy operations. But this research field has a problem getting to the truth of the claim, because there is a serious limitation to types of tests you can run to find out if cows who are locked up for prolonged periods of time experience stress as a result. They can collect cortisol levels in the blood, but basal blood cortisol is affected by a variety of factors including circadian rhythms, sampling, restraint, and stage of lactation. Furthermore, during a chronic stress situation, the basal levels of cortisol are elevated, making the measurement of chronic stress very difficult due to the lack of specific tests. So I have a proposition on how to know that cows are becoming stressed when locked up for more than 4 hours a day. Usually researchers use animals in research because they don't see a moral problem in breeding animals for that purpose, conducting some kind of intervention. For example, give them cancer and then a drug that they think might suppress cancer, and then killing the animal to do the autopsy and find out if the drug had any effect on the tumor or other biological systems. I, of course, find it highly immoral, but for those who don't have my moral proclivities, this is incredibly useful to have a biological system who can't complain, and there is no social outrage about it, as there would be in case researchers were doing the same useful research on humans. But in some cases, there is a huge disadvantage in using animals for research. Again, putting ethics aside. In the specific case that we are talking about, it sure would be incredibly useful if the researchers could ask the cows how they are feeling being in lockup for 4 hours a day or more. So I'm proposing substituting cows with human subjects for this purpose. The big advantage of human studies is that you can actually have them agree to participate, and they would and should be compensated for their time and effort. Here's my study design proposition. The lockup rig should be adjusted for human anatomy, which means that the head stanchion should come from above. This will reduce the added stress of standing on all fours, which is counterintuitive to humans. Study participants will undergo the head lockup intervention. Both objective and subjective measurements will be collected before lockup, during the lockup every 15 minutes, and immediately after the lockup. Objective measurements will include blood pressure, blood tests for cortisol levels and other hormonal levels in the blood, a physical examination, and a psychological examination. Subjective measurements will include a visual analog scale, or VAS, for stress levels as perceived by the volunteer, and a specially developed questionnaire that is designed to find out in what way the stress manifests itself in the subject. One already exists probably, but I just didn't look for it for too long, because it doesn't really matter for now. At baseline, after all the objective and subjective measurements were collected, the volunteers with already high levels of stress will be excluded from the trial. We want relatively low levels of stress at baseline because we want to isolate lockup-related stress as much as possible, and if the volunteers are already highly stressed, their stress level threshold is going to be shorter and perhaps exacerbated by existing high stress levels. This is another advantage of having humans as subjects, since we can isolate stressors, whereas in the case of dairy cows, because they already live incredibly stressful lives, their baseline is going to be high. According to the paper we reviewed earlier, dairy cows often experience stress from management-related practices including handling, transportation, social interaction, nutritional deficiencies, heat stress, disease conditions, high stocking density, and lameness. Furthermore, let's remember that during lockup they are also potentially impregnated or have their heat or pregnancy status checked. However, that looks like, I'm not sure. I think that might add to stress, and we can omit that from the human trials to, again, measure only lockup-related stress in isolation as much as possible. After the baseline data collection, the human volunteers will be assigned to one of 3 study groups. Group A will be locked up for under 4 hours per day, specifically 3.5 hours. Group B will be locked up for over 4 hours per day, specifically for 4.5 hours, and Group C will be a controlled group that will not undergo head lockups, and the participants of that group can roam freely within an enclosure to make it analogous to cows in the dairy industry. The key component of this study should be daily repetition. Volunteers should be subjected to this for a period of time. The word chronic usually means that it persists for 3 months or longer, but the researchers might not want to do this type of experiment on human beings. Makes you wonder. The weird thing is that we kinda already have examples of this in social experiment settings, like for example on Survivor. The show puts people in physical and mental stress situations for entertainment.
Not letting go.
1 hour, 35 minutes.
Not letting go.
The season continues to be a battle. Minutes continue to tick by at a snail's pace. The chances of any one of the 3 of you being comfortable, 0.0. 2 hours.
Awesome job, guys. Oh my gosh. Good job, guys.
Gabby has been struggling, contorting her body, and still not giving in.
It's so hard.
Gabby, don't let go.
Oh my gosh.
Damn.
Gabby
You're a beast.
falls out and to the ground
Oh, Gabby.
2 hours and 30 minutes into this challenge.
It's torture.
Been up there for 5 hours.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
Oh my God, I don't feel good.
I'm sorry. Alec, after 5.5 epic hours, no idea what just happened.
Wow.
What a strange turn of events.
What happened?
So I truly believe that we need this research to happen. We should lock people up for prolonged periods of time in order to find out if cows being locked up for prolonged periods of time experience lockup-related chronic stress. See you next time.